Hi, everybody. So sorry for the delay. I knew it was going to happen, and I threw out a warning on social media, and I probably shouldn't have, because that's probably what messed it up for us. Welcome to Junction Reads. I'm so excited that Lindsay Zier-Vogel is here with us to talk about her novel, Letters to Amelia. It was such a great novel, and I've been excited for weeks to have you here to talk with us. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out today to join us for this discussion and reading. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. I am in Toronto, specifically Etobicoke. So I will start by saying that Junction Reads exists in Toronto, which for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Wyandot Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. I am specifically in Etobicoke, which is the place of the alders in the Michisageek language. Both are still home to many Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on their territory. Lindsay, an official welcome.
Hello, I'm sorry. I didn't know whether I should unmute myself.
That's okay. That's something that I would do. So it makes me feel better. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
the sun shining was so wonderful today.
I know it's the lighting's a bit different. The sun is incredible. I am excited to talk to you specifically about what you're reading right now, and if you wouldn't mind talking to us.
Yeah. So I read this a few months ago, but I literally have not stopped thinking about it. So it's We Jane by Amy Wall. Am I wrong? Oh gosh, I'm totally blanking on her last name. Is that right? We Jane, published by Book Hug. It is, I feel like I'm just like holding it inside of me all the time. So it's set, in Montreal and in Newfoundland, and it really is just like stuck in my marrow. So I keep thinking about that. Jillian Z has a collection coming out, so it's not out yet, but it's poetry and essays on early motherhood. And I feel like that I just cannot wait. Amy Wall, I was right. So I'm really excited about that. And Book Hug is also coming out with Good Mom on Paper, which is a collection of essays. Oh, it just looks amazing. So those are sort of like my breadcrumbs to get me through the sort of next few months. I just finished The Department of Rare Books and Special Collections by Eva Yurchik. And it's set in the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library, where my book is also set. So it was really a lot of fun to sort of be back in that space. I mean, it's not technically set there. It's not talked about as it's set there, but it is. Like she works there for years. And so, I don't usually read the sort of like mystery type books, but it was a wonderful book, and it was so much fun to be inside that world.
And is the entire novel contained in the library, like the entire mystery happened?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's so wonderful. Like all of the like the basement and the sub basement and the reading rooms and the I just feel like it was so wonderful to sort of be back in that space. In a space that I literally can't go to at the moment. So
that's amazing. I love the smell of old books.
I know.
And I don't know. I used to think that it was the smell of my grandmother's house. Like I used to just think that that's what books smell like in my grandmother's house. So when I discovered that that's what all old books smell like, I was like,
You're like, oh my God, I can find this in so many places.
Yes.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. I'm so excited for you to read from Letters to Amelia and to talk about it. I want to talk about research. I want to talk about being in the library. And I'm thrilled that that's going to be a part of our discussion. Before I pass it over to you and your reading, do you mind if I share your biography with everybody?
Of course not. I mean, I will cringe and feel awkward, but yes, please do it.
Lindsay Zier-Vogel is a Toronto-based writer, arts educator, and the creator of the internationally acclaimed Love Lettering Project. After studying contemporary dance, she received her MA in creative writing from the University of Toronto. Her writing has been widely published in Canada and the UK. Since 2001, she has been teaching creative writing workshops in schools and communities. Her hand-bound books, I'm excited to talk about this. Her hand-bound books are housed in the permanent collection at the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library in Toronto. As the creator of the Love Lettering Project, Lindsay has asked people all over the world to write love letters to their communities and hide them for strangers to find, spreading place-based love. Lindsay also writes children's books. Because of the Love Lettering Project, CBC Radio has deemed Lindsay a national treasure. Letters to Amelia is her first book.
Thank you.
That is a great biography.
Thank you.
A national treasure. Just need to put that quote in a frame and make sure your kids see it forever.
I don't think they care, but that would be nice if they did.
Please, I'm so excited to hear you read.
I'm reading from Letters to Amelia. I'm going to read from 3 different sections. So premise for the book, my main character's name is Grace. She has a boyfriend, Jamie, who she's been with for 7 years, and he's just left her. So when the book opens, she is reeling in grief. She is deep into, all of those horrible things that happen post-breakup. She works, as we mentioned, at the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library, and she has been tasked by the head librarian, which is called the chief librarian, which I found in my research, with reading these letters and writing synopses of letters that Amelia Earhart wrote to her lover, Vidal, that have just been found in the library. It's sort of like this top secret project. So we are in Toronto at the moment, and here we go. In the morning, Grace ignores the voicemail from her mom and the empty, deep and delicious cake tray on the coffee table and wishes she hadn't slept on the couch. I'm turning on the water. I am holding the shampoo. I'm rinsing my hair. If she narrates exactly what she's doing, I'm locking the door. I'm walking along the sidewalk. She can keep Jamie's absence from hijacking her lungs. After Grace slips her leftover burrito in the staff fridge, Abigail asks if she has plans for the weekend. Grace pastes on a smile as best she can and makes up something about brunch plans and tries desperately to think about anything except the text messages Jamie isn't returning, the voicemail she's been leaving on his phone piling up like dirty laundry at the bottom of a closet. She tries to swim at lunch, thinking the pool will be healing, but there's something about the weightlessness of the water that undoes her, and she has to empty tears out of her goggles at the end of each length. At least, she tells herself when she climbs out of the water, her limbs heavier than they should have been. People will think her eyes are red from the chlorine. He's gone, he's gone, he's gone. Every footstep back to the library. Grace blinks at the sky and takes a deep breath. She has 4 more hours to go. Back at her desk, she checks her inbox for an email from Jamie she knows won't be there. There's nothing, of course there's nothing. And before she can open Facebook, she pulls out a letter from her filing cabinet and unfolds the delicate paper. The ink is black this time, but the scrawl is still bubbly and loose. Dear Jean, thank you for the silk scarf. It's beautiful. I haven't taken it off since it arrived in this morning's post. You know when you're flying across the Midwest in maybe late August or September, and the sun is just rising and the fields are ready to be harvested? It's that exact color, that goldish green brown. It's stunning. I love it. You wrote that you considered red, and I do love a pop of color, but this brown is my favorite. I found some driving gloves I thought you'd love the other day. They were so soft, a buttery tan leather. They would have looked so good with that tweed jacket of yours, the one you were wearing the last time we were at the St. Regis, but I couldn't find out if they'd be too small. So you'll just have to imagine them. And next time I see you, I'll be sure to measure your hands. Ha ha. I want to get this in the post, so I will sign off here. Love, A.E. Grace pulls up a blank Word document. Undated correspondence from Amelia Earhart to Jean Vidal, she types. Thank you letter for brown silk scarf. But it's a beautiful letter, a love letter. She tries again. Love letter from Amelia Earhart to Jean Vidal, referencing flying Midwest fields driving gloves. But that's no better, not really. She reads the letter again and a knot of tears gets stuck in her throat. She and Jamie used to give each other gifts, little things like the jar of pickles he gave her when they were first together after she mentioned missing her grandmother's dills. She was so touched that she cleaned the jar when it was empty and used it to hold loose change by the front door. The first gift she had given him was a Joe Carter bobblehead she found on the curb. It wasn't in the best shape, but he loved it and kept it on his desk at work. She wonders if it's still there. Next section, we are skipping ahead, still reeling in Jamie grief. And so she and Jamie were set to go to Newfoundland together for their anniversary trip, which clearly is not happening, but she decides to go on her own. She doesn't want to waste the tickets. And as she's reading through the Amelia letter, she finds a letter about Amelia being in Newfoundland. So we're in Newfoundland. So let's put ourselves there. We're in Harbor Grace, which is just a bit north of St. John's, north, sort of around the curve. Grace stops in at the Conception Bay Museum, a must-see according to the official Harbor Grace website. It's a red brick building on the water that used to be a pirate fort. The first floor is all pirates and fishing paraphernalia, nets and sextants and maps. On the top floor, there's a whole room dedicated to the town's airfield. There's a leather flying coat that isn't Amelia's in a glass case, replicas of various instrument panels, a bunch of model planes suspended from the ceiling. The red one, Grace reads, was Amelia's. It looks sturdier than the biplane from Trapassi, but still more like a toy than a plane that could cross an ocean. On the TV in the corner, Grace watches a man in coveralls spin the propeller of a plane. And then the camera cuts to Amelia, standing bluish and tall, her cheekbones smoothed out by the film. She shifts her weight. She touches her lips with her fingers. The only sound is the VHS tape chugging forward, and Grace is afraid it'll catch. The wind picks up, licking the edge of Amelia's shirt, turning the collar of her coat in on itself. Her curls are blown back from her forehead, and she looks a lot younger than 35. The propeller becomes a circle instead of a blade, and the video skips ahead to the bobbing landscape, the ground dark, the sky a few shades lighter, and then the plane, her Vega, cuts across the screen. The camera stays trained on its tail until there's no plane, only sky, and the scratch and dust marks of old film, and Grace realizes she's holding her breath. A teenager in a pioneer dress with Converse on her feet stands in the door. "Sorry, we're closing for lunch," she says, not at all apologetically. "Oh," Grace says, "Oh, okay." She wants to watch the tape again, just once more, and she debates saying that they've sent her from the University of Toronto, that she's doing research, but she can't handle the lie and doesn't think the teenager would care anyway. So she leaves and follows the teenager down the stairs, past the pirate display, and steps onto the sidewalk. Siri loops Grace around the city to Lady Lake Road, gravel crunching under the tires of the rental. There's no parking lot, just a patch of scrubby grass and a few half-crushed Labatt ice cans. Grace puts the car in park and grabs her raincoat. She'd expected the airfield would be paved, but no, of course it's not. It's long and narrow, and the grass has recently been cut. There's a plaque attached to the rock at the top of the airfield, Amelia Earhart, May 30th, 1932. The grass is soft with rain and dotted with clover, purple pom-poms scattered throughout the green. Grace pulls out her phone and checks the Wikipedia page she had pulled up the night before. It took 14 hours and 56 minutes for Amelia to make it across the Atlantic and land in Northern Ireland, almost 15 hours before she set her plane down in the cow field that is now part of a golf course, where the 14th hole is named Amelia's Landing. It seems impossible that you can putt on the same grass where history was made, but Grace supposes there are much stranger things happening on historical sites than golf. She stands at the top of the airfield and pictures Amelia's Vega rolling down the green. She wants to run the length of it, but is afraid someone will see her, so she just stands and stares. It's raining, just spitting at first, and Grace shoves her phone into her pocket, but soon it's pouring, and even with her raincoat, she's soaked before she gets back into the car. She sits in the front seat and eats Pat's bologna sandwich, staring at the rain-blurred field. It feels strange to be at the exact airfield from the video in the museum, this exact stretch of land she saw in black and white not even 20 minutes ago. It's strange to see what Amelia would have seen. The same tree line, Lady Lake across the highway, the ocean close enough to smell. Grace pictures Amelia's riding boots tied up to her knees like the ones on her statue, goggles pushed to the top of her flying hat. She wants to go back to the museum and wait until the teenager reopens it so she can watch the Vega barreling down the grass again, its wings eventually catching wind. Spoiler alert, she does not go back to the museum. All right, so the next section I'd like to read from, we're back in Toronto. She's coming out of the deep grief part of the book. I didn't want to read sections from too late in the book because I didn't want to have any spoilers for those of you who have not read it yet. And we're getting spoilery the further we got along. I really want to read a section from the Saskatchewan section, but again, too spoilery. So we're going to be in Toronto. Do I have to say anything else with it? I think that's it. Here we go. Grace flips through the letters she's read and finds a few she hasn't. There are 3 more complaining about the lecture circuit and another short one about changing Saturday plans to Sunday. And then Grace finds one about Toronto. She scans the first line again in case she's misread the looping handwriting, but no, it definitely says Toronto. She feels a hum behind her breastbone the way it does when someone famous has a tie to the city. Dear Jean, I had a really vivid dream last night, but all I can remember now is that I was in Toronto. Have you been? I'm guessing probably not. Pidge went to school there for a while, and I was there in 1917 for a couple of years. It wasn't the best time to visit. That's an understatement. They were deep into the war with soldiers training and heading overseas and coming back wounded, if at all. The war was barely an idea in Boston, but it was in full swing in Canada. Some parts of being there were horrific. Some parts I still cannot bear to remember. The screaming, howling, the pain, the nightmares the soldier has, they still haunt me. But there were lovely parts too. Strange how that works, isn't it? It was frightfully cold that first winter, but the skating was wonderful. I had a beau up there. Was he really a beau? I don't know. We didn't really talk much about it. It was too strange to talk about love when we were surrounded by so much horror. And he took me to hockey games, which were marvelous. It was when I first saw a plane. I know much has been said about that red plane I saw during the exhibition, that red plane that, what did I write in the front of it? Whispered in my ear as it dove for the crowd, then pulled up. There are a bunch of those formative moments that people and journalists want to hang on to, but that red plane in Toronto really did speak to me. It wasn't easy to get to, but after that, with any free time I had, I'd go up to the airfield north of the city. They wouldn't let me in a plane, of course, but it just felt good to be around them. Their hum and roar, the spinning propellers, how the pilots would swing their legs up to get into the cockpit. I hadn't done it yet, but I knew exactly what it would feel like to scramble up a wing, to spin a prop, to swing my leg up and over. All this to say, I realized this morning that I want to go back. I want to see it without the hospital and the soldiers with missing limbs. I want to wander through the university campus without tents set up for the Air Force. I want to wander by the lake. It's on a lake. Did you know that? I had no idea until I'd been there for a few months. It's strange, isn't it? All the places we keep close, even though it's been years sometimes since we've been there. Love, A.E. Toronto. This is where Amelia fell in love with flying. This is where it all started. Grace flushes with a combination of excitement and pride, and she can't believe she hadn't thought to look it up before. She Googles Amelia Earhart plus Toronto plus hospital and finds a photo of Amelia dressed up as a nurse's aide. She scrolls down and discovers the hospital Amelia worked at is just south of the library. Grace locks up the letters and walks into the early September heat without telling anyone where she's going. Toronto. She was here. Amelia was here, walking along these very same sidewalks. Grace walks west on Harvard, then south, to the building that splits Spadina Avenue like a rock in the river. This was Amelia's Toronto, except for instead of nervous first-year engineers painted purple and following a guy with a trumpet and the smell of 7-Eleven hot dogs, there were First World War soldiers who hadn't mastered walking with crutches or the turn of a wheelchair wheel. The imposing Gothic building isn't a hospital anymore. It hasn't been for years. It's been under construction forever, and the ivy stripped off the brick now, encircled in a chain link fence. According to a sign, it's going to house the architecture department when they're done with it. Grace stands in front of the fence and watches a digger claw at the ground. This is where Amelia worked 10, 12-hour shifts, according to Google. Grace knows it's crazy, but down here, even with the bulldozers and excavators, Amelia feels close by. Like she could run into her on the sidewalk or maybe see her turning down Wilcox Street, her long strides, her arms swinging. A biplane that looks like it has no business still being in the air shoots straight up into the sky, leaving behind an arrow of smoke. It peaks, then goes tumbling down toward the lake, spinning over itself, engine off. Grace holds her breath until the pilot pulls upright before hitting the water, a trail of smoke like a peal of laughter. People clap, and Grace reminds herself to breathe. The air show marks the end of the summer in Toronto. She hasn't ever been, but Jenna and Grace are in Sudbury visiting family, and the pool is closed for Labor Day. And she couldn't stand to spend the day at home, so she biked down to the water and found a small patch of grass, the highway grumbling behind her. There are risers set up right in front of the water, but they're blocked off for air show VIPs. She's definitely not one of them, with their Tilly hats and sunglasses clipped on their normal glasses and multi-pocketed shorts. They carry binoculars and fancy cameras and wear t-shirts from other air shows. This is where Amelia fell in love with flying, right here on the edge of Lake Ontario during the X, maybe even right here where Grace is sitting. The lake stretches out blue and peaked with white caps as another biplane flies straight up into the sky. There's a lull and then an ear-splitting roar of the snowbirds. Everyone lifts their hands like visors over their eyes, squinting, searching for the 9 planes that rip open the sky with a roar that comes instantly from everywhere. They're angry looking, these jets, all angles and sharp corners as they split off, each veering into its own corner of the sky. 2 planes come roaring back. Grace sees them before she hears them, low over the water, so low she thinks she might be able to see the pilots. One of the planes is upside down, its wheels sticking up in the sky like a dog plane dead. It can't be more than a few feet away from the other plane. Do the pilots ever bother looking down at the X with its rickety roller coasters and Ferris wheel and whack-a-mole booths? Do they see the lake and all the Tilly hats lined up on the edge of the water, the ribbon of Lakeshore Boulevard separating the fairgrounds from the lake? 6 of them shoot across the sky in a diagonal line, then fan out like overlapping playing cards, reorganizing near the CN Tower. It's like synchronized swimming, except with planes instead of sequin bathing suits. They split off like falling tulip petals, drooping back toward the earth. They dip down over the lake, then shoot straight up into the blue, all 6 of them disappearing like shards of glass glinting in the sun, leaving behind their signature thunder.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that you shared the Newfoundland section. I thought it was one of my, not the favorite, but one of my favorite parts of the book. The letters were my favorite part, but
oh, thanks.
I have a few questions, and for the first time in the history of Junction Reads, I'm going to remember to tell everybody, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat for Kaylee, and she will ask on your behalf at the end. Kaylee's probably super proud of me, and that's great. The biggest, the thing that got me as a reader in reading Letters to Amelia was how much I love research, and how sort of envious I was of Grace when she was given this job of reading and blurbing and archiving these letters. I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about the research that went into Letters to Amelia and your experience with the Thomas Fisher Library. And
so Amelia started in this very haphazard sort of like, I just write letters. They were sort of autobiographical, but they also weren't, and they were sort of fiction and poetry. I don't even know what they were. They kept getting published. Yeah. And so when I decided that they would be sort of letters proper, and that there were going to be letters from Amelia, so I would literally Google like Amelia Earhart plus haircut, and then I'd find a beautiful photo. There are some amazing photos, yes. Like one with this cowboy named Carl Dunrud, and he has this huge blade like in his pocket, and it's just amazing. Yeah. And another one in Miami when she's in a barbershop. And I would just literally just like write whatever came to mind. Amelia Earhart plus shoes. Like my initial process was very not capital R research at all, right. Yeah. When I was generating material, which is generally how I work. Like I generally generate a lot of material and then figure out what to do with a lot of it. Mm-hmm. But eventually I got to a point where I had to, do some actual research and put a storyline together and, not just invent Amelia in my imagination. Right. So I found a collection of Amelia's letters that she wrote to her mom. So I read a bunch of her novels. Her novels are her books, they're nonfiction. They're quite terrible. The tone of them is quite, it was the 20s and 30s. So the tone was very formal and very, like, there was just this distance. Yeah, like very not conversational. And so, I thought these were going to like unlock Amelia's voice for me, and they did not. Like, I was like, this is boring. I don't want this. But I found letters that she wrote to her mom from when she was 4 to when she disappeared. And that all of a sudden I was like, oh, like there's her voice. And so from those letters, from the research I had sort of done through reading biographies, through, my random Google searches, I started piecing together the parts of her life that I wanted to include in the letters. So, her time in Toronto, that she had a boyfriend here, that she went skating a lot, like all of those little bits along the way. Yeah. But yeah, I do feel like for the Amelia sort of storyline part, originally it was just a lot of random Googling, and then I sort of had to figure out what parts of that I wanted to really include through her words. And then being in the Fisher, so I knew from really early on, like before I had a plot, before I had a character, that I knew that I wanted this book set, or I wanted a book set at the Fisher. Yeah. I did my master's at U of T, and I spent a lot of time at the Fisher because I was working on a master's thesis that no one will ever read about Dora Mavor Moore, and they have all of Dora Mavor Moore's papers there. So there was just something about knowing that they had these, like, there's a basement and then there's a sub basement. Like, I feel like you like descend to the center of the universe, and they're just papers of all these extraordinary people, like so many people that like we don't know about, right? Yeah. And there's, all of their Christmas cards and all of their family photos and literally every letter that they've, written that has been preserved, every letter that they received. And there's just something so powerful about that. So I knew that I wanted to have it there. And it's also just such an inspiring space. The reading rooms, there's like, I don't know how many, like 5 or 6 like stories above you of just these like ancient manuscripts, like the medieval manuscripts from who even knows how long ago. I can't say because I would be wrong, because apparently I'm not very good with my research. Like all of that. They have a big Alice in Wonderland collection, like, and those are just towering above you. Like, it's such an inspiring space. But then, so I was like, I want to sit in this inspiring space. But then, of course, it's also just a workspace that has a like really boring staff room with a fridge that's filled with people's lunches. And there was something that I loved about, like originally my idea of like this like inspiring space. Yeah. And then pairing it with the fact that like it's also just a workplace.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's how it is.
Yeah. I can't believe that I've never been in there.
Oh God. I know. It's so amazing.
And just listening to you talk, I'm like, hours of operation. That's so exciting. The thing that got me, and I wanted to say, I was moved by what you said about finding official stuff that Amelia read and it sounding proper, because the first thing that pops into my head is what you talked about, what Grace talks about, and Amelia mentions in her letters, that she was never good enough, right? Like she was always competing against the men and always trying to do what men were doing. And even though she flew, that first transatlantic flight, it wasn't her accomplishment, right? Even though she'd done it again. So I wonder if when she was writing, proper things, that she was conscious of not including her own voice, like not making it personal because she was afraid of being judged or demeaned.
I also think, her eventual husband was a publisher, a publicist, like he was her publicist. So like a lot of it was like, let's control the narrative and let's be like, it was, it had a veneer to it, and you can read that. Like it, she wrote for Cosmo magazine. And again, there's this sort of like distance. And again, I think that, writers now also have that distance. There's nothing wrong with it, but I didn't feel like it, it didn't have that, like what I felt like was an authentic voice to it. It felt like there was like very much a really deep sense of who an audience would be versus, any sort of like
intimacy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there really is in the letters, there is an intimacy, which again is carried. It continued, I guess, when Grace starts writing her own letters to Amelia, that Amelia becomes the only person she can share her darkest fears and thoughts with, right? Which I thought was a natural, beautiful movement in the book. It was nice. The other thing I wanted to ask, because the letters are fictional, which you've said, and which to me is incredible.
Thanks.
Were there?
But a lot of people called, like when the book first came out, a lot of people called my publisher being like, are they fictional? And I was like, yes, that's the best. Like my dad fully did not believe. He was like, yeah, it must have been hard to like create a book around these letters that you couldn't change. And I was like, I wrote them. He was like, and he was like, no, no, you didn't. Don't believe it. So yes, this makes me feel good.
That is so awesome. Yeah, no, I honestly, and I mentioned in a social media post that there was one section, I think about 3/4 of the way through, where, and I try to stop myself as a reader, especially because of that research instinct that I have of looking stuff up, because I fear that it's going to affect how I'm reading the book. So I did my very best. It was so hard to not look stuff up. I waited like 75-80% through. And then I just did this deep dive, and it honestly, it was the perfect book for me to read outside of picking up whatever great biographies there are about Amelia Earhart. And that's, I wanted to ask you that too. Did you read any biographies about her? And if so, which one would you recommend? Because
I read a really terrible biography about her, and that's sort of what inspired all of this. I don't even know the name of it. It was bad. It was like, like taking like conversations she had when she was a 3-year-old and like putting it in quotation marks. And I was like, come on, this is bad writing. It's lazy. But from that book, because a lot of the biographies are similar, they follow the same parts of her life. And so from that, I mean, the book was terrible and terribly written. However, I also fell in love with Amelia Earhart because of it, like all the different parts of her life that aren't the fact that she was a pilot and that she disappeared. Like, generally people know that about Amelia Earhart. It's interesting. It is not, to me, the most interesting parts of Amelia Earhart. And so, I sort of used them as, to check my research as I was going along, but really they were a jumping off point for me more than like a, seminal text.
Right. And that, I want to talk about letter writing, but I also want to talk about what to me feels, and it isn't talked about a lot when people have talked to you about letters to Amelia. So I want to talk to you about it. Motherhood, I feel, is so important, and I don't know, and it's 100% me imposing this idea that how would Amelia have been if she had been a mother, and the idea, because there's 1,000 of them, the idea that she had a baby and she was put up for adoption, and then Grace as a mother. How, without getting too personal, how did that come to be such an important part of it? Like, I feel like I can imagine when the book was written, and I know the ages of your kids, but I want to know
that's some good research right there.
how that was such a, including Amelia's, the thought of her potentially having a child.
So so those are rumors. And so when the book again came in like these fits and starts, like I went to Newfoundland in 2013 and I like wrote all the Newfoundland sections, but like I still didn't have a character, I still didn't have a plot. Like that was all I had, was this like Newfoundland section. And I just kind of kept like taking all these various runs at it that sort of wouldn't go anywhere. But I was pregnant with my daughter I had her in April 2017. And she's my second kid. So with my first kid, I was like, I'm going to write a novel on my mat leave, which yes, is a stupid idea because, oh my God, Lindsay, I was like, Alice Munro wrote when the baby slept. I'll do that too.
Right.
So my child slept for 15-minute windows. So I made myself write this novel in 15-minute windows, and it was horrible and it was unreadable. And so when he was like 8 months, I read it and I cried for days. And I was like, I'll never be a writer. Kids have ruined my life. That's how it felt. And so when I had my daughter, I was like, I know that I cannot write a novel. I'm not going to plan. I was very pregnant. I was like, I will not plan to write a novel. I've learned my lesson. But as I was getting more and more pregnant, I was like, I feel like I could write letters if she sleeps for 15 minutes like that. I can't write a novel, but I could maybe write these like very short form pieces. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I knew she was going to be my last kid, and I was really interested in examining pregnancy and all the huge feelings I had been experiencing through fiction. And again, someone was like, "Oh, are you Grace?" And I am not Grace at all, but I feel like it's like I took that sort of core those core questions of like what it is to be pregnant, what it is to question, if you want to have a baby, are you ready to have a baby? What is it to be a mom before you're a mom? Like all those things. So I like took these as sort of essential questions that I had, and then I like stuck them in a different person's body, a different person being Grace, and then like to see how all of that would sort of manifest through an entirely different person's experience. So again, I feel like elementally I was asking myself similar questions as Grace was asking, but how it all sort of presents and comes through the body is different. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense, because one of the things that I took away from reading Letters to Amelia was this really powerful feeling of love, right? Like, and not just mother love and research love and letter writing love and any of that, but it was like almost knowing or feeling, not knowing, but just feeling like this project, this novel was a love project.
It was. And when I had my daughter, she slept. So I also got to write this novel.
Wow.
Which was, I mean, never take that as like a how-to guide, because that's
no, right. Yeah.
bad idea.
Just wait till the second baby, it'll all be perfect.
It's easier. And again, like I feel like my expectations were lower, but like, you know, I remember she was born on April 4th, and I remember again a few days later, and again, it wasn't like I was like, I better go back to writing, but I was just like, the Amelia story had just like, oh, also she came 3 weeks early. So like right before she was born, I was like, oh my God, I think like I had the character and like the plot started happening, and I had like printed off all of the like bits and pieces I had written along the way. So I was like, I had all this momentum, and then she arrived early, and I was like, duh. But it was amazing because I just got to pick up the momentum. And the Amelia having a baby section, I was very pregnant at a coffee shop, and I Googled, as I like to Google to generate material, Amelia Earhart plus pregnancy, or Amelia Earhart plus baby. And I found, you know, deep into the Google pages, this rumor that she had a baby. And of course, then when I went to look it up later, I could not find it anywhere. Like I was like, I need, where's it?
Of course.
Because again, I wasn't in this like, I must document my research sort of phase. I was just in this like, oh, I'm just generating ideas phase. So I did find it again. But again, since the website has because, you know, it's all in the like conspiracy theory space. And so again, the website has evolved, and I don't know where it is again. I looked it up the other day, but yeah.
I want to talk to you about the conspiracy theories, because there are some fantastic ones out there. I want to talk to you about what you believe. But before I make this all about me, as usual, Kaylee, there are some questions I see popping up, and I want to give time to people who have come.
So our first question is from Patty, and Patty asks, I did this the last time with Wayne. I don't know how to say epistolary. Okay. I learned it, and then it probably went right out of my brain. So let's try that again. Patty asks, is the epistolary novel dead in a generation?
That is a great question. I hope not. I feel like there's been, like, since Amelia came out, I feel like there was just this like slew of epistolary involved novels. So like the Miriam Taves book is sort of framed as a letter. The Sally Rooney book has, I mean, they're emails, but they read as letters. Maybe they should have been letters instead of emails. Who am I to say? I'm not Sally Rooney. Right. But I feel like, and there was a whole bunch of others. Oh, Night Bitch had a whole bunch of, emails.
Yeah.
So I think it depends. I think if you're like a strict, like it must be a letter, maybe. I think if any sort of written correspondence can be involved in the epistolary form, then I don't think so. I think that there's something really powerful about that exchange. I think there's something really intimate about it that I think we all hold on to. I think that, I don't think that emails have the same capacity for intimacy. Like, yes, I'll read an email from my boss, and then I'll read an email from my kid's principal, and then I'll read an email from my friend that's like really engaged, and it's all in the same font. It all sort of happens at the same time. Right. But I still think that there's a space for it, for sure. Yeah. So I don't think it's going to be dead. I also feel like, records have come back. Maybe a letter writing will come back.
And also, I remember having this discussion with someone when Bridget Jones' Diary came out, which I read in 3.5 minutes. And a friend said to me, oh, I can't read that. I can't read those books that are written like journals or diaries. No, I can't do it. And I was like, what? Why? So I feel like there's always going to be an audience for that kind of stuff. And emails, I mean, if there were a book filled with emails that were subsequently deleted, the emails that you want to send that you don't send.
Yes.
That you just like delete. I would read that. That would be fantastic.
That would be awesome.
Kaylee.
All right, our next question comes from Samantha, and Samantha asks, how different do you think Letters to Amelia would be if you didn't have access to the Fisher?
Oh, I don't even want to think about not having access to the Fisher. So I had, a bunch of my books are there. I have another pile over there that are headed to the Fisher shortly, whenever we can get in. So John Shoesmith is my sort of contact there. I'd done a bunch of book fairs and stuff with him, and I was like, hey, can I set a book at your library? But like, can I ask you a million questions? So he was just so fundamental in, like he took me on a tour to all the places that you're not really supposed to go. And then, I would send him things and be like, is this accurate? Is this what they, because it's like the trolley, I would call it a trolley, but it's actually called a book truck. And, like right. How do the like the staffing shifts work? How long do you sit at the reference desk? How long do you, like all of those things? I don't think I would have, it just wouldn't have felt as three-dimensional. I would have had to make it up.
Right.
Which, I feel like we all have, as writers, capacity to make things up, but there's something about the specific details about a specific place that just make it feel so much more real. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would have been a really different book. Also, so the letters from Amelia to Jean came quite late in the process. And so I had to send him a note, and I was like, so hypothetically, at a shelf read, what she told me about, where they like close the library down and go through every single shelf to make sure nothing's missing or whatever. Right. I was like, do you think that like, this is hypothetically possible to find a box of letters? And so, the sort of the basic premise of the book of these Amelia letters,
right. Yeah.
Like I needed him to help me figure out if that was like an actual possible thing. I mean, nothing like that has happened at the Fisher. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus there, but yeah, I think that it really wouldn't have been, I would have had to do a lot more sort of gymnastics to figure out how to make it work without the Fisher.
Right. That's fantastic. I mean, I can't, to me, and saying that I haven't been there, I can't imagine for people who are absolutely in love with the library, how it would feel to read it and have the accurate details. I think it's great.
And so many cool things, like they have a cuneiform tablet, they have like Shakespeare's folios, like it's, and they, like you can see them, like it's just a really remarkable place.
Yeah, amazing. Gosh. Kaylee.
Yeah, our next question is from Terry, and Terry asks, have you written any letters to Amelia since publishing the book?
Oh, that's such a good letter, or a note, whatever it's called, comment, question. That's the word. Letter. It's a wonderful letter mailed to me directly via the chat function. I have written one since, and I wrote it the day Amelia came out. So she came out September 7th. Yeah. And I kind of didn't know what to do with myself that day. Like I went to the bookstore and I saw it and it was exciting. And my kids were still home because they didn't go back to school till the 9th, which I thought they'd be in school on the 7th. And so I took a picnic down to Lake Ontario where Amelia fell in love with flying, which I love being down there. I feel quite connected to that space. I mean, I love swimming. It's by the water. My dad took me to a lot of air shows as a kid. So there was something really lovely about being there. And I kind of just kept kind of crying on and off all day. Like I was very overwhelmed by the whole experience. And so I, without really thinking about it, I wrote her a letter about the day, and it was really lovely. I don't even know where that letter is now, but it's somewhere.
You need to hang on to it because it's going to have to go into the Lindsay Zier-Vogel box at the,
at the Fisher.
Thomas Fisher. Seriously.
I need to publish a few more books before they're going to be asking for my papers.
Well, you got to find it and hang on to it. I see that happening.
Okay, and
is there more?
We have one last question, unless any more come through, but we're coming to the end of our hour. So our last question was from Julia, and Julia asks, who were your literary inspirations as you were writing letters to Amelia?
Oh, I always want to know this.
So good, but I don't ever remember, Julia. You were my literary inspiration. So Julia is part of my writing group.
I was just going to say, you should just say Julia. Yeah. It's a leading question.
Julia's the answer.
Yeah.
She's part of my writing group with Samantha and Terry. Oh God, I don't even remember. I literally don't remember. I read a lot of books about motherhood, although that was sort of from oh God, Julia, you're stumping me. Books like, oh God, I used to have a bookshelf of them, but then when I finished the novel, I reshelved them, and now I don't know. I don't know. I read a lot, and I don't always hold on to books that I'm reading. Oh, though I do remember when I was very early days postpartum, I read Birds Art Life. Is that the title? Julia will correct me if I'm wrong. By Kyle McClear. And I remember the sort of quietness of it and the sort of like hush of I remember exactly what I was listening to Nico Case, the hush of the room, with baby beside me. And then, I would pull up my laptop and work on books. And I remember those feeling quite connected, even though of course, content in the form of the book is not particularly connected at all.
Right.
I spent so long writing the novel.
Birds Art Life. Yeah.
From Birds Art Life. There we go. So I feel like I started writing or thinking about Amelia in like 2001, 2002, and the book didn't come out. Like I started writing the novel 27. Like I feel like it's like literally everything I read for 20 years
in the last 20 years.
So I feel like my next book, it feels a bit more like narrowed down, but yeah, Amelia felt it was a project that took a long time to sort of figure out.
Yeah, that's I mean, to me, that's probably why I feel so much of you in the book when I read it. I have 1,000 more questions, but I am cognizant of the time. I wanted to talk to you about what was the thing we talked about at the very beginning? And then I dropped.
I don't remember the names of books I read.
It just popped into my head, and when you were talking, and it left me again. Oh, the conspiracy.
Yeah.
Because reading all of the what ifs and maybes and maybe she went somewhere and had a family and just decided, oh wow, this is
New Jersey housewife,
and it feels pretty good. Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about the conspiracy theories and what your thoughts and beliefs are.
So I spent like Grace, I spent a lot of time avoiding the conspiracy theories. Again, I feel like, the things that she did in her life, that she was a social worker working with Chinese and Syrian refugees, and, that she started a fashion line. She was like, I can't fly in these clothes. I'm going to make my own shirts that are long enough to tuck into my pants, kind of thing. I feel like she just did so many other really extraordinary things that are sort of bigger than her disappearance.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time avoiding them. And then when I was like, okay, I've got to go there. I've got to dive in. I really put it off till the end of, writing.
Yeah.
So I sort of like did it in real time with Grace. And there's some are just so preposterous and some are so, I don't know, just so bizarre. Like, I can't, like, if you know anything about Amelia Earhart, the fact that people think that she was, gave it all up and became a New Jersey housewife.
Right.
Like baking cookies for the bake. Like part of me is like, in what world would she be okay with that?
Yeah,
She
exactly.
would not be. That she was, she disappeared in 1937. So it was right sort of at the cusp of World War II. So there were a lot of, she was friends with the Roosevelts and, there are all these, was she a spy? Was she captured by the Japanese? Like there was a lot of that. I don't know. I mean, part of me thinks probably her plane fell into the ocean.
Yeah, that I think I felt when I started to read all of the ideas and, with evidence and with whatever.
Evidence.
Yeah. It almost, it brought more sadness because realistically, it's true. There's absolutely no way that she would settle for not, rising up and going, I'm here, especially because of her connection to the Roosevelts. But in reading all of the what ifs, that the kind of, writer fantasy world stuff, and then you come back and you're like, oh, she's died. She's dead.
I know. I mean, the theory that, so while I was writing the book, I mean, this happens like every 2 to 3 years where they're like, we're going to look for Amelia. We're going to find her this time. Like, I feel like we're due for it coming up soon. So like, keep your eyes out. It's going to be happening soon. It's usually men. And there's this very like, sort of like conqueror, sort of like, I'm going to conquer the mystery of Amelia. It's very
like the Titanic, right? Like the money they invested in that. Yeah,
totally. And I feel like it becomes this like sort of ownership piece that I feel very uncomfortable about, but it happens all the time. And so while I was, picked up the project again, started working again in 2017, there was an expedition going to find her. Like I was written about the book again, names have been changed. But again, I feel like, at first I was like, oh, what if they find her? And then this whole book project is over. And then of course I realized like, no one's going to find her. Like, it's been too long. The Pacific Ocean is too deep. And it's just, like there was an ulna bone found on this island, and maybe it was hers, but it was too long to be a woman's, they said. But then it turns out like maybe it could have been like, and the bone went missing. Like, again, it's just been so long that I just feel like, right after Amelia's disappearance, they, populated the island that she disappeared on. So again, like,
what are the chances?
Things were probably disturbed. Yeah. So I mean, part of me just loves that. I love that we'll never know. Like, I love that people can decide what they think.
Yeah.
But, and also like just the thought of Amelia being, stranded without what, like, it's so unbearable to think about for me.
No, and I think you're right about it being endless, right? Like every man out there is going to want to discover the truth. Every one of Amelia Earhart's greatest fans is going to want to discover the truth. So it'll probably go on and on and on. But
which I kind of love. Like, I love, there's very few things in this world that are like that we really have no answer for in this way. And we don't, though I did find out that some young people, I feel like universities sort of, I don't know what level university, but from Carbonear, which is right near Harbour Grace in Newfoundland. They created these robots, like these underwater robots that were looking for her, which I did like that there was the connection there.
Fantastic. Oh God. What are you working on right now?
I am working on a new book. It's called The Fun Times Brigade, and it's so much fun. I love it. It's about a children's musician. So a musician, she's sort of like the early aughts answer to Sharon Lewis and Bram. And so she struggles for a long time with like definitions of success. Like, is she successful because she only makes children's music? She really struggles with that herself. And then she has a baby. And of course, when you have a newborn, you can't tour the country all over the place and can't be performing. So once again, she sort of really struggles with definitions of success and self-identity and sort of figuring out, where and who she is in the world without, being a performer. It's so much fun. Awesome. I love it.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for sticking around, everybody. We are going to raffle off 2 copies of Letters to Amelia from Book Hug. Thank you, Hazel and Jay, for giving these 2 books for us to raffle off. Kaylee, take it away.
All right. So our first winner for today is Patty Scott.
What?
Yay, Patty.
You need to get some lottery tickets.
All right, and our second winner for today is Sarah Campbell.
Yay, Sarah! Hi.
So, congratulations for winning the 2 books. If you already have a copy of Letters to Amelia, you can nominate another person to win your copy, and you can email me their name and address, or you can send me your name and address, and I will have that sent off to you, and you can gift it, or if you haven't read it, of course, read it. And the email is junctionwrites@gmail.com. Lindsay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so wonderful. Thanks everyone for coming.
Great. Thank you everyone for coming. We're back here on February 20th talking to Xiok Kwan about Chinese restaurants around the world. And I am super excited about that. I hope you'll join us. Lindsay, again, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone.
Take care, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you, Kaylee.
Thanks, Kaylee.